Strange reports of Apollonius Tyanaeus in Asia in the 1st century AD. Apollonius of Tyanaea, 15 to 98 AD, was a Greek Neo-Pythagorean philosopher from Tyana in the Roman province of Cappadocia, which is in western Turkey today, in Asia Minor. He was an orator and philosopher around the time of Jesus Christ and was compared to Jesus by Christians of the 4th century and by other writers in modern times. All the information we have about Apollonius comes from Philostratus. Philostratus owes his fame mainly to the 8 books that made up Thais ton Tyanaeus Apollonius. Hometown was Tyana in Greek. This is a Greek city in Cappadocia. His father had Cappadocia is the area where the first Christian churches were built in those sandhill-looking things. Because, of course, we know that Christianity was being persecuted by the Roman Empire. So that's where he was. Now, his father had the same name and came from the ancient generation whose roots reached as the first settlers of the city. He traveled throughout the then known world, and through his descriptions were able to derive important information about the era of the 1st century AD, as well as surprising facts about the distant past. Facts concerning the birth of Apollonius. When the mother of Apollonius was about to give birth to him, the ghost of the Egyptian demon Proteus, whom Homer says changed forms, in other words, he was a shapeshifter, appeared before her. Undaunted, she asked what she would give birth to, and he replied, "Me." "Who are you?" she asked. "Proteus, the Egyptian god," he answered. I need not explain who Proteus was in wisdom to those who have read the poets. He had various forms, which were constantly changing, could not be apprehended, and seemed to know and foresee everything. We must bear in mind Proteus, for in the course of history it will be proven that Apollonius had the faculty of foresight more than Proteus, and escaped many dangers and difficulties with greater ease in circumstances which had suffocated him. They say he was born in a meadow near where his shrine now stands. We must not be ignorant of the manner in which he was born. When his mother arrived at the time of delivery, she dreamed that she had to go to the meadow to pick flowers. When she got there, the maids were picking flowers, and she fell asleep on the grass. Some swans that lived there set up a dance around her as she slept and raised her wings, as is their wont, uttering a voice altogether breathing and zephyr in the meadow. She flew over the ode and gave birth. Any surprise can cause premature birth. The locals say that at the moment he was born, lightning was created that looked like it would fall to earth, but it remained a meteor and disappeared high into the ether. With all this, I think the gods wanted to reveal and mark the glory of this man, his superiority over all earthly things, and the fact that they mourn in front of the water, confessing their domination. The locals consider Apollonius the son of Zeus, but he calls himself the son of Apollonius. He is similar to the gods. There is near Tyana water of oath of Jupiter, as they say, Jupiter meaning Zeus, as they say, and they call it Asvasmeo. An unexpected encounter with the awesome Ambusa. Ambusa in mythology is a ghost of the retinue of the goddess Hecate. It fed on human flesh and could take any form. That's another shapeshifter, man-eating goddess. After crossing the Caucasus, they say they saw people 4 cubits high with dark skin. As soon as they crossed the Indus River, they saw others 5 cubits high. Of the march to the river, the following are worth mentioning. Let's remember that Alexander the Great, as he was marching east towards the India and China, also saw Nephilim-looking people. Now, he did away with them. Others he didn't do away with. He threw down pits, covered the openings with metal, and built pyramids on top of them. But I guess he didn't get all of them. No, as soon as they crossed the Indus River, they saw others 5 cubits high. Of the march to the river they followed, the following are worth mentioning. They were advancing under a brilliant moonlight when the ghost of Ambusa appeared, changing forms or disappearing altogether. Apollonius understood what was happening. He himself about Abusa and abused Abusa. He abused Abusa and told his companions to do the same, for this is a remedy for this attack. The ghost disappeared, running and making loud noises as ghosts do. About reincarnation. Regarding the soul, what do you think? Apollonius then asked. What Pythagoras has delivered to you and we to the Egyptians, said Apollonius. Could then they say that, just as Pythagoras said that Ephoribus was, so also that thou, before thou camest into the body, was one of the Trojans or the Achaeans or any other? Then the Indian replied, Troy was then destroyed by the Achaean navy. You have been destroyed by your words about her. You consider only those who took part in the Trojan campaign to be brave, and you overlook the many godly men that your country in Egypt and India have to display. But since you ask me about my former body, tell me of the enemies and defenders of Troy. Whom do you find most admirable? Achilles, he answered, son of Peleus and Thetis, whom Homer praises above all the Achaeans for his beauty and his greatness and for his great deeds. He still considers men like Aedes and Nereus admirable and praises them as handsome and brave, but after Achilles, similar to him, Apollonius considered my ancestor, or rather my previous body, he said. This is how Pythagoras considered Ephoribus. The Ganges ghost. Once upon a time, he continued, Ethiopians who are of Indian origin lived here. Ethiopia did not exist. The borders of Egypt were beyond Meroe and the falls, and there were the sources and mouths of the Nile. At that time, when the Ethiopians dwelt here under the rule of King Ganges, and the land nourished them sufficiently, and the gods cared for them, but when they had killed this king, they were not considered unclean by the rest of the Indians, nor did this place allow them to remain. Their seed was destroyed before it had fully germinated. The women miscarried, their herds found no food, and wherever they went to live, the ground receded. Also, the ghost of Ganges used to appear on their way and upset them. He did not leave them alone until the prime movers and executors of the murder had purified the earth by their death. This Ganges was 10 cubits long, 10 cubits tall, unlike any human in beauty, and was a child of the river Ganges. He drew his father, who was overrunning the Indies, to Erythra and reconciled him to the earth. Therefore, while he lived, the earth produced abundant produce, but when he died, it became vengeful. At some point, Philostratus mentions Apollonius' description of his encounter with the spirit of the dead Achilles in the ancient tomb where the hero's ashes were kept. Since the others were also showed great interest in the discussion and were willing to listen to him, Apollonius said, I did not dig a pit like Odysseus, that means Ulysses, nor did I attract the souls with the blood of lambs to talk with Achilles, but I only wished what the Indians say when they plead with heroes. Achilles, I said, most people say you are dead, but I disagree, and so does Pythagoras, who is the ancestor of my wisdom. If there is truth in our faith, show yourself before us. If you would use my eyes as witnesses of your existence, you could benefit greatly from them. At the same time, there was a brief earthquake around the mound, and a new five-legged figure dressed in Thessalian chlamys was presented. His form did not seem arrogant, as Achilles is thought by some. Although he looked terrible, he had not lost the luster of his face. As for his beauty, it seems to me that he has not yet found worthy praise, although much has been said by Homer about it, because it really cannot be described in words, and whoever tries to glorify him will rather belittle him than honor him as he deserves. When I first saw him, he seemed to me as tall as I said, but he continued to grow taller and become twice as tall and more, until he seemed to me 12 feet tall. Then he assumed his complete form, and the beauty always increased with his dimensions. He used to say that he never cut his hair, but keeps it intact for Sperchios, because of all the rivers he considered him first, but his beard was just beginning to grow. Addressing me, he said, "I'm glad to meet you because I've always wanted to meet such a man. The Thessalians, that's northern Greece, have not brought offerings to my grave for a long time. Of course, I don't deserve to be angry so far, for if I become angry, he will find them a calamity worse than that which befell on the Greeks here. I only advise with mercy that they do not neglect matters and consider themselves worse than these Trojans who, although they have lost so many men because of me, offer me public sacrifices and the first harvest of the products of every season, and with an olive branch ask for reconciliation, but whoever I will not accept. Breaking their vows to me will never allow Ilium to regain its former form or flourish, which other ruined cities have achieved. His condition will never be better than it would have been if he had been possessed only yesterday. So that the Thessalians do not suffer the same fate, take care to report to their assembly what I told you." "I will go and tell them," I answered, "because my purpose is to save them. But I, Achilles, want something from you too." "I see," he said, "and it's obvious you want to ask something about the Trojans. So ask me 5 things, whatever you want, and the fates allow." I first asked if he was buried, as the poets say. "I lie dead here," he said to me, as was the most pleasing thing for me and Patroclus. "We died very young, and our ashes are both in a golden amphora, as if we were one. Concerning the lamentations of the Muses and the Nereids, which they say were made for my sake, I have the following to say. The Muses never came here, while the Nereids still frequent." I then asked if Polyxenes was slain over his tomb, and he told me that it was true, but that she was not slain by the Achaeans, but that she came of her own accord to the mound, and giving great value to the love of her and him, fell upon upright sword. In other words, she died over Achilles' tomb. The third question was whether Helen had really come to Troy, or whether all this is Homer's speculation. And he said to me, "For a long time we have been deceived by sending envoys to the Trojans and fighting for her sake, because we thought she was there, but she was in Egypt, in the house of Proteus, the ghost demon from Egypt, in the house of Proteus, since Paris took her. When we were convinced of the truth, we continued to fight for Troy itself, so as not to leave in shame." I ventured a fourth question, and said that it is worthy of question how Greece produced so many great men as Homer mentions, assembled in a war against Troy. Achilles said, "Not even the barbarians were far behind us, so virtue flourished throughout the land." The fifth question was, what happened, and does Homer ignore Palamedes, or did he know him and keep him out of your story? And Achilles answered, if Palamedes did not come to Troy, then Troy never existed. Isn't that something? This I've translated for you from Greek Wikipedia. It's from Greek Wikipedia, and I've translated for you from Greek. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.